Alright everybody, this is 216 Papa Bravo. We're going to do our caliber change today from 40 caliber small size primer to 30 caliber rifle in large primer. So that means we're going to have to be changing a couple things. Not only do we have to change out the tool head and all the little parts associated with it, we're going to change out the primer feed tube and the primer seeder, which we'll get to. So I've got my tools laid out. There's the tools I need to do the changeover. Here is all the parts we need to do the changeover. And take the bag off this. You'll see I have a complete tool head with all the parts we need are in the conversion kit. One thing about the Dillon press that maybe I haven't talked about before is the fact that you have to buy a die set, or if you have a die set, you need a die set plus a conversion kit to make the total changeover. So to do the changeover from one caliber to the other, you have to have a complete die set and all the little parts that make it caliber specific. So right now, all the little parts I have, and there's a feeder tube, little piece in here, there's an aluminum piece here, the shell plate, these little pins right here, and there's a feed slider right in here that you have to change out that are all caliber specific. So for a 308 30-06 combination, I need this conversion kit. That's this guy right here. Okay. Plus, I need the die set to go with it, which is here. So on this we have the three dies you need, which are the primer extractor, resizer die, bullet seeder die, and the seeder crimp die. So let me get organized here and we'll get going. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is take off all the non-essential items. We're going to remove our bullet catcher, our primer catcher, and then we're going to start from the top like we always do. We're going to start top down by removing things. So we have everything out of the way. From the top down, we're going to strip it, then we're going to rebuild it from the bottom up. So the first thing we need to do is take out our, get it out of there. This is our caliber specific feeder plate. That comes off. I'm going to take this tube off. As I mentioned, there's three parts in here that are caliber specific. There's the bottom of the tube. That's a little feeder, goes in that. Then we have a really small part. It's aluminum on aluminum, so you don't do too much to tighten or loosen this. This shouldn't take much. So that comes off. Okay, then we're going to remove our tool head, which simply has two pins in it. So take the two pins out. We'll need to reuse those, set those aside. I'm going to slide the tool head right out. Okay, so that's all out of the way right now. Okay, we're going to remove our set pins. 3 of those. I'm going to elevate the ram. We need have a set pin over here. And I know you've seen this, do this before, so just a loose set screw here, and then loosen up the main screw that holds on the shell plate. Take that bolt out. There's the feeder, or ejector rod I should say, the shell plate. And then finally, the last piece is this feeder plate that goes, again, caliber specific. So now you can see the machine's basically down to the basic parts if you want to change just the caliber part of it. You get a little cleaning up to do down in here. But now we have to do two things. We have to take off our primer feed tube to change out this wheel right here. There's a wheel in there, and then there's a primer tube that goes inside the tube itself that changes it from a small primer to a large primer. And then on the very bottom down here, and again, a little difficult to see, but this part right here is a part that actually seats the primer itself. And again, this one's set up for a small primer. We need to get this set up for a large primer. And you can see here all the parts. Here's the part, the ram that actually seats the primer, and this is the wheel, and this would be the tube that goes inside the primer tube itself. Of course, these are the primer feeder tubes that we put in to feed this. Okay, so our first step in taking this apart is to take down our primer tube. There's 2 Allen headed screws we need to remove for that. Loosen that up. Loosen that up. This is probably the only really tedious part of this. Number 1. Number 2. And that comes right out. Lift it straight up. Okay, so you can see that the wheel here, which advances your primers, is set to a small primer, and inside the tube here is a small primer tube. So we're going to take this off, and I'll show you how to take that apart in a second. Okay, then our last step of doing this part is to get under here with our wrench. I'm just going to loosen that part. A little tight quarters with my big fingers, but we're going to make it work. Okay, and this is your primer seater. You can see this is set up for a small primer, and actually when the case comes and sits down on this, all you see really is that, and the plunger here plunges and actually seats the primer up in the case. That's what does that. So we need to change that out. Okay, let's swing this around a little bit. Okay, so we're going to take this apart. Now a little trick to this is there's a little ball bearing in here, down in here. When you take this apart, you want to have it so you have it level like this, not tilted, because you got a ball bearing and a spring under there. Really easy to lose these parts. So let me get the right Allen key. Okay. Gonna loosen this little guy up here. Again, this comes right out. Be careful with little parts here. Slide it to the side, it comes straight off. And this wheel comes off this way. And you'll notice, here's that ball bearing right here. See, there's a little spring inside of here, and then the ball bearing. So again, you want to be real careful not to be in a place where you can lose that. And you can see the tip of our primer feed tube, which is that part right there. See the smaller hole and the larger hole. We're going to go from this one to this one. So let me get that spring and ball bearing out of there. Don't lose those. Taking off our primer sensor so it knows we're running out of primers. That's the lock nut that holds it on there. And this tube simply slides right out. Okay. So again, we have the primer tube size. This is the small one, this is the large one. You can see the diameter difference there. We're just going to feed in the large one right now. And it just sits in there like that. And you're going to make sure it sits at the bottom like it's supposed to. Now I'm going to reassemble. You want that just snug. I'll get that reset once you get it back on the machine. Just going to get it snug down. Okay. All right. Now for our two pieces we need to replace. We have the large primer wheel and the large primer punch. So what I like to do is replace the parts in the bag you got it out of, so we always have those set together. Okay. So now we no longer need that. Okay. So reassembly. Spring goes first. Ball bearing. Our wheel, doesn't matter which way this goes. Okay. Notice there's an L in here for large. If you can see that, it's large. Large. Doesn't really matter which side this is on. It can be either way. Doesn't really matter. It's going to fit right in there, just like that. Okay, there's a little spring tension, so you're going to push down on that. Again, we're going to reinsert our locking key. Get the right tension, there we go. That just slides into place. Take our little screw. Put that back on there. Here we go. Again, you just want to snug these, not really tight, just snug. Get them too tight and they'll revolt on you. Okay, so that's that rebuilt. All ready to go. Didn't take that long. Now we're going to take our large primer punch and reassemble that back up in here. Again, my fingers are pretty fat, so a little difficult to get started, but once you get it going, it goes in okay. There we go. Come on, you can do it. There we go. And once again, we're aluminum on aluminum, so just going to snug. Not really tight, but we're going to make it just snug. Just like that. Okay, you can see this piece right here installed. That actually comes up and feeds the primer into the shell casing. And again, underneath here, you see where that part fits. We're talking about this piece right here. Okay, now we can bring the ram back down. Now the last important thing we have to change over is this black piece right here. This piece is what controls the feeding of the case from the case feeder to the shell plate. Okay, take out one little screw. This pops right off. And notice there's a long angular side. That's for pistol ammunition. If you turn it around, there's a short angular side and then a short up and down side, 90-degree side. This is for rifles. So it just goes on just like that for the rifle. That's what we're going to is rifle. Large primers. So put that on the correct way. This is all part of the case feed mechanism. And there's a little adjustment, not a whole lot, but have a little bit of adjustment there to get them on there correctly. Just snug it down. We can adjust that later if we have to. Okay, so now the basic machine is totally stripped. We've changed over the primer punch, and now we're going to put the primer feed mechanism back on, which is here. Again, this only goes one way, and you'll see that it has this center knob goes right in the hole here. Just like that. Put our 2 Allen head screws back in. Get them started. And again, we're steel on aluminum, so you want them snug but not like overly tight. Okay, so they're down now. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a snug. You see that? That's about all it needs right there. Again, this down, we're just going to give it a little tight right there. Okay, and this I'm going to use this. This right here is what advances the primer when it's able to do that. You can see here how that advances the primer to the new, and then you can see the primer seating spud come up and actually push that primer into the new casing. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so now we're going to reassemble our basic parts. We have the, conversion kit right here, which has all the parts in it that we need for 308. So we're going to go backwards now. So last in, last out, first in. Okay. So we have the shell feeder plate that goes in here. Simply just drops right in. Fits right in there. You can see that. Next we have the shell plate. Which is right here. Gonna sit that right on top of the machine, kind of where it fits in a slot. Bring the ram all the way up. I'm going to reinsert our ejector rod, our main bolt, get that hand tight, and then we're going to take our large wrench and our small wrench. Okay, so all we're really doing here is adjusting. Maybe that'll be better. We're adjusting this nut that holds it in with the set screw, so we get some play on the plate, so it's free but not too free. And you can start to hear it drag a little bit. Okay, now see, I can't move it now, so that's too tight. I went to where it's really dragging, then back it off just a little bit, and that should be good. And if we have to, we can come back and adjust that. Okay, so when you operate the machine, it should want to just go by itself, just like that. Okay, so we got freewheeling, free turning, so that's in there all good. All right, we're almost done. Now we're going to put our locator pins in. They go right in here. Three of those. We have our feeder assembly. This is the part that it actually puts the casing right on top of this and then feeds it straight down. That goes right in here like that. And this one's really sensitive. It's really soft aluminum on soft aluminum, so you want to snug that up a little bit. And I take the smallest wrench I have, find my hole in here, and just give it a little bit of a push, just a little bit. That's all you need. You don't need much on there. Okay. Next, we're going to insert this little piece right here. I'm going to put this piece in here like that. And it goes one way, so it fits real good. This black piece has a notch right here. Goes right in the back of the notch here. That matches up. And then the feed tube fits right on top of that. Always make sure the arrows are pointing up. Put the tool head back on. .308 or large caliber rifle up in the shell feeder, which simply sits in and spins until it locks in. And you'll hear that definite lock in there. And the last thing we install is our fail-safe rod. Just make sure that if we have no case in the loader, that it won't drop any powder if we had any powder in here. So that's the last bit of our installation here. You can see how it, without something to push on this, it won't drop any powder. Alright guys, now we've done everything we need to do to this one to make it for a large primer. Change over the primer assembly and the primer punch. And that process should take you about a half an hour. In all reality, you know, I went kind of slow because we're talking about everything as we go, so you really saw everything I hope that you wanted to see as far as doing this. These machines are quite simple once you get the hang of them. The first time you have them, though, it is a little daunting. I'll grant you that. With all the bits and pieces and all the adjustments you have to make, it gets a little daunting. But once you get into it, it really isn't that hard. The next thing you're going to want to do is to actually set up your dies for the particular caliber, if you haven't already done that. Really pretty simple. The first one here, first station, is your resizer die. All you're going to do is get that down to, let me get that spud out of there. Okay, you're going to get that down to where it's really hard to see in there. Try to get you a flashlight. Where it just barely touches the shell plate there. Okay, that's the sizer die. I'm sure I even got a good shot of that in there. Anyway, it's right in there, the big silver thing. See if I can get the spud in there. It's right here. That's your sizer die. Right in there. And just want to have it touching the plate. So it just touches the plate. The next thing you want to fix is your powder drop. Now this took me a little while to get used to, because you have to adjust both the height of the powder measure and then to get used to how far this mechanism turns back to actually drop the powder, because you want this bar all the way in a rearward position. Now I've got an empty case in here just to show you what that does, and I'll just put another one in. These do allow you to take your shell out and put another one in. So what we're doing here, as the casing comes up, it's actually going to push up on this whole mechanism and lift it straight up. And you'll see this bar then go in the rearward position. See how that motion works, just like that. And again, you want this bar to be all the way back and this to be all the way back. So you be sure and drop your powder in there. And that's the height adjustment in here, is how you get that going. And there's a few adjustments to get everything back the way it's supposed to be, but this is probably the most difficult thing. So take your time with that one. As far as if you have the powder check, really easy to adjust. You want to have it so that you see there's no gap in here. When that's up, see the gap now? As long as you get this to where it pushes up but not crushes the case, crushes this case anyway against here, that's how you get your powder measure. Then you have this spud that you can adjust the top of here, and that would correspond with that slider would correspond with that little thing. If you're off on your powder, it's going to tell you. Okay, then the next station is your bullet seeder die, and you're going to start that off and just work your way down. And it takes a couple times to get it done, but once you work your way down, you get your overall height of your overall length of your cartridge with the bullet in the case. And you can do it either with a loaded case or just take a simple brass case. Like that, and then put your bullet in it and then just start seating it until it actually gets in. You can pull it out later if you have a puller. That's just one way to do that. And then the last station is your crimp die. Again, you're going to start way off. That's this die right here. You're going to start way off, in other words up, and then you're going to work it down until you get the proper crimp. And by that, you're going to have a crimp on the case to where the bullet seats, and this is perfectly matched. Then you want to have a case gauge like this one. This happens to be a 308 case gauge, and you want that bullet to drop in, that whole cartridge to drop in there, be flat across the top. See how that's flat across there? That means the cartridge is perfectly aligned and it doesn't protrude past the end there. If it protrudes past the end, then it's too long. It should just barely be inside that second crease there, you can see. Some guys like them a little shorter like me, but that's personal choice. So anyway, that's the whole conversion. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You know, if you really liked the channel, I really appreciate your subscription. If you have any comments, please leave questions or comments below, and we will answer them as soon as possible. So again, thanks for watching, guys. 216 Papa Bravo, out.